Hello everyone, Seb here, and in this video I'll be showcasing some of the best things to do, see, eat, and experience in Victoria, Canada. Being the capital of BC, it packs in lots of history, fascinating indigenous culture, and a unique coastal vibe, while still putting the British in British Columbia. So first off, how to get there? Well, you can fly in from many places across Canada and the US with airlines like Air Canada, WestJet, Flair, Swoop, Lynx, and Alaska Airlines, as well as smaller regional airlines like Pacific Coastal. If you're traveling in from a different continent though, you may need to stop over in Vancouver. If you're up for quite a fun flying adventure though, you may want to consider taking a seaplane, which looks quite fun. I've never done it though, but it's convenient though as well because they come in straight downtown and you don't have to worry about all the hassle of an international airport. There are many daily scheduled flights with Harbour Air flying in from Vancouver and Tofino seasonally, and Kenmore Air flying in from Seattle. If you prefer traveling by water, there are many ferry services from places like Vancouver, Seattle, and Port Angeles. Now, if you're super rich and want to burn a hole in your pocket, the obvious place for you to stay is the Empress Hotel. The Empress Hotel is a big, top-notch, fancy, luxurious hotel, and it's right here in Victoria, right close to the harbor, closely located to everything. But of course, there are many other great hotels and some not great ones around Victoria, like the Laurel Point Inn, Coast Victoria Hotel, the Oswego, Hotel Grand Pacific, the Parkside Hotel and Spa, Abigail's, and also the hotel that I'm staying in, which is Chateau Victoria. And it is, well, not the fanciest hotel in the world, but it gets the job done, and it's made out of Lego as well. Now, for where to eat. Well, as you can see, there are lots of different types and styles of restaurants spread out around Victoria. Actually, there's quite a lot of them, quite a big concentration of them. But the place I recommend most for a nice classic Victoria West Coast dining experience is Redfish Bluefish. Yes, this is basically a place that serves freshly caught fish and chips and other types of seafood just down on a dock by the seaplane terminal out of an old shipping container. You definitely should not miss the chance to stop here for at least one meal on your stay in Victoria. Next up, we have a place that is kind of far out of the actual city, but more closer to the airport, but it's a good place for me to go once I was complete with a session of plane spotting, and that is Mary's Blue Moon Cafe. This restaurant is known for sometimes having av geeks hanging around it, like me, and also, well, look at this cake. Anything else need to be said? Moving on, if you want a super fancy meal experience, then you will definitely need to check out high tea at the Empress Hotel. But you don't necessarily need to go through the whole tea routine in order to just eat something good. Because, well, something else does need to be said about that cake actually, because this one is better. You can also order some of the nice Empress Hotel gin, but I don't drink alcohol because I think it's disgusting. Oh, and also ice cream. Now, there was ice cream at the Empress Hotel, but I also found this place on Government Street that is quite great. Yes, the Victoria Ice Cream and Fudge Factory offers a extremely wide range of ice cream flavors and all kinds of other treats as well, which is a big thing that I enjoy. And now for the all-time thing to eat here in Victoria, a original Pacific Coast recipe, the Nanaimo Bar. Yeah, you can find these at just about any bakery or restaurant anywhere. And now we come to pretty much the largest section of this video, the things to do and places to see. First off, one of my top recommendations is the Royal British Columbia Museum. One of the things this museum is most known for is its incredible natural history exhibit with lots of information about the natural history of the Pacific Northwest coast. It gives lots of information about how this area was formed and how it looks today. Now, this museum also has an incredible exhibit about the civilizations and cultures of the indigenous people of the Pacific Northwest. Now, unfortunately, this area was actually closed at the time that I visited the museum, so I really was disappointed that I missed out on that. But outside of the museum, there are plenty of totem poles and even a house. Inside this atrium type place, there are many old poles and segments of poles, but outside the house and the rest of these totem poles were mostly all carved by Kwakwaka'wakw master carver Mungo Martin and some of his relatives. However, the cultural styles of these poles and carvings differ, as there are some Kwakwaka'wakw ones, some Haida ones, some Gitxsan ones, and many others. The indigenous culture is definitely what fascinates me the most about places like this in Western Canada and the US and Alaska. But yeah, it's what I find the most fascinating, and I take a lot of time to research about it and learn more. Located on the other side of the Royal BC Museum is the BC Provincial Legislature building, because Victoria is the capital of British Columbia, so this is basically where the Parliament and everything is for BC. So yeah, it is where the politicians all gather to basically run the province, and it's a pretty unique building. In the skyline, you can't really miss it. And down over here we have the harbor, which has a variety of nice, lovely boats and everything at it, and even some houseboats and float houses. And it does take quite a while to explore all the docks and look at every sort of corner of the harbor, but it is quite nice to admire all these lovely boats. If you are looking for a fun way to get around the harbor, and you don't want to just walk around it, you can actually take one of these little water taxi harbor ferry boat things that are pretty fun to take, and they run pretty much constantly.
I'm just here for this week.
Now, also operating out of this harbor here are a large amount of whale watching companies and fishing companies as well, so you can take a boat out and go see whales or go catch a fish.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, this is a nice spring salmon that I caught, and I actually got it frozen and packed up so that I could cook it and eat it. And you can do this as well. Just make sure to thank the fish for giving its life so that you could eat. And while you mosey around downtown Victoria, it's almost guaranteed that you will see lots of totem poles. In fact, there are pretty much too many to fit all into this video, so I am going to make a separate video dedicated to just the totem poles of Victoria. However, across the harbor from the government legislature building, there is quite a special place with some totem poles at it, and it is called Palastis, which translates to Place of the Cradle, which is a place that indigenous mothers would come with their babies' cradles after their babies turned a year old, and they would place the cradles in the water to ensure a long life for their children. Nowadays, this rocky point also makes for a great plane spotting location. If you enjoy all the indigenous culture around here, then stay tuned for a nice place to go shopping as well that will be coming up. Out in the distance, you can see the Hertzberg Institute of Astrophysics, which has a big observatory with a nice space telescope. However, I didn't make it actually all the way up there just due to a lack of time, but it certainly is an interesting place. For now, I'll take you up Government Street, which is pretty much the main drag with all the fancy shops and restaurants and stuff on it, which is closed to cars during some parts of the day, so you can only just walk on it. Anyway, this is where all the nice souvenir shops and everything are, including this one that appeals to an aviation enthusiast like me. And if you keep walking north up Government Street, you'll soon find the Northwest Origins Gallery and Gifts, which is a great place to go in if you're interested in all the First Nations and Indigenous culture of the Pacific Northwest. All the employees in here are First Nations as well, and they're quite nice to talk to as well. And this shop does sell a little bit of cheap touristy stuff, but most of it is all genuine handcrafted indigenous art and carvings. And with whatever you buy, a good portion of the money goes to the artist and supports the whole indigenous community. I bought a Haida eagle cap and a raven shirt. Now, another great place to go on Government Street is Quasar's Arcade, which is, well, an arcade with a whole ton of old retro games and pinball that are all very, very fun. If you're interested in more of the historical part of the city, I have a couple places that I would recommend you visiting. The first is Craigdarroch Castle, which was built in 1890 for coal magnate Robert Dunsmuir, and he was one of the richest people in Canada, but his labor practices were controversial. He eventually commissioned basically this giant mansion to be built, but he died before it was completed. You can also get a glimpse of some lovely wildlife beside this beautiful house. Another great castle that you can visit is Hatley Castle, which is a bit of a drive outside of Victoria at Royal Roads University, and it was originally a dormitory for cadets and staff at Royal Roads Military College, and now it just houses staff at Royal Roads University. And it's also been featured in a countless amount of movies. And of course, you can also find another totem pole on the castle grounds. Now, the Butchart Gardens are also quite a bit of a drive out of the actual city of Victoria, and they are pretty much a really big garden that I didn't actually manage to get to because not everything was in full bloom at the time of filming this video. But yeah, these are some pictures of what this nice botanical garden does look like. And another place that I wish I had actually visited is the Malahat Skywalk, which is basically a big sort of elevated path that spirals up with beautiful views of the nature around it. And now for a great place to go if you're interested in aviation and planes and flight is the BC Aviation Museum. Here they have a great collection of old historical aircraft that you can look at and even climb into some of them. And I highly recommend getting a sort of guided tour with one of the staff members there, because they're pretty much all just av geeks of some sort or other, and they're sure to give you a good time going through all the aircraft and everything there is. One of the highlights is their beautiful Vickers Viscount turboprop, which was from the 1950s, and it was actually the first turboprop airliner ever. So it was, back from the 1950s, when air travel was still a rather fancy thing for all the rich people. The average person back then probably wouldn't have been able to afford many flights like this.
Let's go.
Those are massive windows. Located at the Victoria International Airport, close to the Aviation Museum, is the Viking Air factory, where they build parts for the Twin Otters and seaplanes and stuff like that. But if you do manage to get a tour inside of the warehouses, you are not allowed to take any pictures, though. Back in the city of Victoria, there is the Maritime Museum, which is quite an interesting place if you like ships and whatnot. There are also some fun interactive activities that one can do at this Maritime Museum, including playing with anchors and tying knots. But one of the most fun things that they actually had at the Maritime Museum were these screens where you could find words in indigenous languages, which were quite fun. There was also a screen showing where the different indigenous groups lived on the Pacific Northwest coast, but I actually think I broke it. Next up, we have another place in Victoria that is fun for the whole family and that you shouldn't miss, and this is Miniature World, which has a massive collection of all kinds of small models of just about anything you can think of, pretty much. They have historic models, building models, old Canada sort of mock-ups of the old cities, aircraft models, models of indigenous settlements, and even some mythical story models as well. Now, the place to go if you like creepy crawlies and insects and arthropods and stuff is the Victoria Bug Zoo, which I did not enter. Instead, I decided to take a nice walk down another part of Government Street, and it used to actually be called Carr Street, which may have had something to do with Emily Carr living on it. And indeed, if you walk down this part of Government Street, you will eventually come across Emily Carr's old house, where she used to live. And if you don't know who Emily Carr was, she was from Victoria, and pretty much Canada's most famous female painter, and she traveled up and down the northwest coast painting all the indigenous settlements, and their villages and totem poles and everything. And now here we are at another interesting place in Victoria, which is Mile Zero of the Trans-Canada Highway. Yes, this is actually where the highway that goes all the way across Canada starts/ends. And this is the place where Terry Fox would have completed his run across Canada had he lived. However, year after year, people continue his run for him and for everyone who has had to battle with cancer. And now, probably the most significant park for nice, lovely strolls in the city is Beacon Hill Park. Yes, here there are a variety of pathways over some interesting terrain, and you can see lots of nice wildlife, especially birds, both small birds and big birds. There are also many interesting trees in this park, and there is a petting zoo sort of thing that I didn't go in because it was infested with small children. But what is probably the most prominent thing in Beacon Hill Park is the world's tallest totem pole. Sort of. Well, this is actually the world's tallest freestanding totem pole with no cables or additional things like that to hold it up. There are taller ones with cables, but this is the tallest freestanding one in the world. And now we're almost at the end of our journey throughout Victoria, but there is just one more thing that I have in store for us. And that is going to be a nice peaceful walk down on the beach, admiring the true beauty of nature. Because, of course, the most fabulous part about this part of the world is just how spectacular it is. The water, the ocean, and the beaches with all the mountains in the distance, and little tidal pools. When you sit down and just look at everything working naturally how it's supposed to be, you really just get a different point of view, a different sort of mindset on the whole world. And that is really why I love places like this. And finally, that concludes my destination review of Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. This is kind of the first time I've tried doing something like this, but it's just a city that I really love visiting, and I hope to get back again soon. And I hope that I've showed you some great places to stay, eat, and see and experience whenever you decide to come out and visit. Until then, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.